into Straight Fire, one of the sharpest gambling guys out there. Now, listen, we brought him on. I feel like it was like 3 years ago, maybe four. And he was obviously good. He told his story about working in the Caribbean and South America. I mean, Central America or South America, one of them. And it's just fascinating his rise. And I will tell you guys this: we do gambling on the show every day. I'm in the contest, blah blah blah. There is only one guy I listen to on podcasts about gambling, and that's Adam Chernoff. Adam, welcome in back to Straight Fire. And sorry to say great things about you, but you're good, man. You're on top of this.
Yeah, you're pressing it a little bit too far, but I'll let you go with it for this time, and next time we might have to dial it back a little bit.
My favorite part is where on Adam's podcast, where he's with Right Angle Sports and he does his daily breakdown, he'll say another service, or it was given out on a podcast or a website. And for half a second, I'm like, what website? What podcast? I think about it briefly, and then I'm like, it probably doesn't matter. If it wasn't his move, it's not something I care about. But by the way, do you get asked a lot about other services besides Right Angle?
Well, I do, but I don't know if that comment's fair because there's people who are betting a lot more than us with a lot more influence than us, but
Oh,
we certainly have an impact. But it's a reality is that there's probably, I would say, like 6 or 7 groups. A few of them are public, will have an impact earlier in the week, and then there's a few more later in the week that stay hidden that have a direct influence too. So it's a two-way street, but I get asked a lot. And I don't feel it's my place to tell what
yeah.
other people are willing to bet because I wouldn't expect the same from them. But in terms of talking about why stuff moves, it matters every week.
Yeah, no, certainly. And this week's a crazy week because it's weird, Adam. When I heard you start to touch on games you kind of like, I went 5-0 in the contest last week, so I'm very excited. I'm in deep. How after you have a hot week, you're like, all right, let me break down everything. And I feel like I've already got a bunch of games I like, which scares me, Adam. And then I start hearing you talk, and I'm like, oh, Adam likes them as well. Are you starting to rub off on me? Before we get to the Sunday slate, let's start with Thursday. Cowboys, Giants. Everybody knows the numbers. Cowboys have owned the Giants 12 straight. Dak dominates them. Cowboys off a loss, Giants off a win. This felt like a layup for Dallas. Do you think that plays out that way on the field?
I do. I'm going to say right now, I think what we saw on Monday in this market as it opened up was a very good fake by somebody who wanted to bet Dallas and was driving the price down so they could get Dallas at a better number because this was as high as 7 last week on the look ahead markets. And I mean, this got down to Dallas -4, which was pretty incredible to see how low it got. But now we're back up to a price that makes a lot more sense. A little bit difficult to say now, but I agree that Dallas has their way. They have to. This is, I don't want to say season on the line, but after 2 bad losses, you're in this spot against a team you dominated twice last year. And the Giants defensively looked a lot better against Cleveland, but they blitzed a ton. And that's something you can't do against Dak Prescott. It works against the Browns O-line that's down 3 guys in game and is a wreck to begin with. That's not going to work against Dak Prescott, who's elite when facing the blitz and when facing pressure. So I think Dallas has their way with the secondary. And then if Daniel Jones against this pass rush for Dallas can hold up, great. But I don't know if that's the case. So I do think Dallas does well here.
Any theories on why the Dallas defense has fallen off a cliff? Dan Quinn leaves. I don't think there was that much other movement on the defensive side of the ball. Maybe I think Gilmore's gone, but and Bland is injured. But how they went from like an elite unit last year, at least in many games, to holy cow, the last 2 weeks they've been torn apart.
Well, they weren't good against the run last year, and they're not
Okay.
good against the run this year. So I think you nailed it. There were no additions, and that's the problem. They needed to add guys up front to have a chance, and they didn't add anybody. And now they're seeing the effects of that. I think back to the Green Bay game, they couldn't stop the run and were embarrassed in the playoffs. That's what's happened the last 2 weeks. I mean, Baltimore puts up 250 with a banged up offensive line. That's an indictment of how bad this Cowboys defense is. But like, are the Giants going to do that with Singletary? I don't think so.
Yeah, no. All right, let's get to Sunday. You're a Jets fan. I don't know how that. I guess you could tell that story if you want, but you're a Jets fan. I'm a big Jets guy. They are in a great spot. Last year they went to Denver with Zach Wilson, I believe, and handled Denver. They covered the spread by a mile because of a late defensive touchdown. But It feels like they're the side again. I was surprised that they were 6.5 against the Patriots. You nailed that. I had Patriots just because I'm a Jets doubter and pessimist. This line does feel about right to me, but are the Patriots viewed as better than the Broncos, given that they were only 6.5 and this is 7.5?
I don't know if it's viewed as better. I think this is now understanding what the Jets are. In the offseason, there was the big question of what is Aaron Rodgers and what are we going to get on your show and on the herd. I said you're going to get a great Aaron Rodgers, and
You
there's
did, yeah.
maybe verdict is still out on that. We'll see,
No, no.
but hard to doubt with what we saw on Thursday Night Football. I think the number is right. I agree with you. When this was a touch higher earlier in the week, I kind of leaned towards Denver at 8 and 8.5, only because they have a defense I think that is underrated. And the thing with the Jets that we're going to see how it plays out, they play so slow, like glacial, and they're running the play clock down. And so when you're asking a team that plays that way to cover more than the touchdown in the game with a short total of 39.5, you need everything to go right all game to get outside of that margin. And I feel like the Thursday night game was an example of everything going right with zero mistakes and zero issues. Do they play to that level again? I'm not so sure against a pretty good Broncos defense here. I think it's right, but I would slightly lean towards the Broncos here at 7.5.
Well, I don't. You say pretty good Broncos D. I mean, Kenneth Walker embarrassed them in the opener. Last week Tampa had pretty much nothing. Although Bucky Irving looked like an All-Pro in the few carries he got. I had to grab him in fantasy. But I don't. Is this run defense good? This feels like Brees Allen 15 carries, Braylon Allen. Brees Hall, and then Braylon Allen maybe 15 carries, and the Jets run for like $195 and win handily.
Well, let's see. It would be great for Jets fans if that comes through. You're likely without Morgan Moses on the right side of the O line.
Fair.
It's probably going to be a Fashanu game. Brees Hall hasn't had much push up the middle yet this season. Allen's been a good kind of counterpunch. Let's see if it works. But again, though, like if that's the case and you're saying that's going to happen, do you want to be backing a team that's going to go run heavy to slow things down even more to cover this big of a number? Maybe, but it's not like you're backing a very explosive, fast-moving Jets offense here to cover a big number.
Have you adjusted the Jets defense at all since that 49ers game? They showed well against the Titans and Patriots short week, rookie coach, mediocre quarterback. I don't know. Have you? I mean, they couldn't do anything to stop the Niners defensively. Injuries to I haven't seen the latest on Mosley. Obviously, Jermaine Johnson's out. No Hassan Reddick, but I don't know. Jets defense. Any thoughts?
A lot of the 49ers game was scheme on the offensive line and that run game for what the 49ers did, which is going to be an exception for teams that they face. With that said, though, you nailed it. Now, no Reddick. It seems like that ship has sailed. No Johnson. Like the pass rush is a problem. And they're going like they got very blitz specific on the Thursday night game against the Pats, and almost every blitz worked. We saw one or two that were blocked well, and then they were exposed in coverage. They're going to have to be very selective with that. That to me is the big worry with the defense is like how can they manufacture a pass rush? So it's less optimism in my eyes for the defense than preseason, but it's still a very, very good defense.
Yeah. Let's get to Cincinnati, Carolina. So I want to know how you handle these aspects gambling. So after the game, after the Bengals lose to Washington, Burrow, there's video of him going into a private meeting, not going to the locker room with the head coach and the defensive coordinator. And Burrow looked kind of ticked off in the presser after the game. And how does that factor in, if at all, to your handicap? I mean, everybody has the information. We know Panthers coming off a win, Bengals off a loss, season on the line at 0-3. But like, does that change anything for you that there seems to be some dissension among the ranks?
That one's a hard one to gauge. Often I'd love to look for the little subjective cues and things like that you hear and you see. I don't know in this case what to do with it. I thought the Bengals offense couldn't have played much better, honestly, against Washington. A few red zone opportunities and then field goals, not touchdowns. That's the difference. But stats wise, down to down, they were dominant. They just have a defense that cannot stop anybody. And so I'm more worried about the defense than I am with the offense. I think in this game, the offense is going to look even better than it did last week because the Panthers defense was hidden for how bad it was against the Raiders.
Yeah.
And now you have a Bengals offense that has T. Higgins probably closer to 100%, that has Chase with no more excuses, that has emergence of other skill guys in the slot as well as tight end. So this is the game to me where you get an even better Bengals offensive performance. Question is, can the defense stop anybody?
Yeah. Oh, and I was going to ask about the defense.
Oh, it's
If
bad.
you look on Pro Football Focus, like half their defense is orange, meaning really grading out horribly. And this comes to team building, Adam. And I know you're not like a front office guy, maybe yet, but it seems like this model of, hey, pay your quarterback everything, pay your left tackle, pay an edge rusher and a wide receiver, and you're top heavy. It seems like that's not really working. That's where the Bengals appear to be headed.
The problem with Cincinnati is they can't stop the run up front. They let DJ Reader go to Detroit. He was the one guy holding down the D line. Now he's gone, and you have Hill and Rankins behind him, both injured. Everybody can get anything that they want on the ground in the middle against this Bengals offense, and it's putting the secondary, which is going through a bit of turnover as well, into some tough spots. And there's not really anything that the Bengals can do until they get guys back. And we're starting to see, like, Anarumo looks great when he faces the Chiefs, but on a week-to-week basis, that shine that he had about all these second half adjustments, it's not really there anymore because the personnel is lacking, and he's dealing with some changes. They're not stopping anybody right now, and that's a big worry for sure. I don't know what to think of this defense other than it's bottom 5 in the league for sure.
Yeah. Can we play up an Andy Dalton revenge angle, or does that not apply since he's been gone for a few years?
Yeah, it has been a while. You're right. I don't know. He's in a tough spot this week because there's now offensive line injuries accumulating. Adam Thielen went on IR, and so the Panthers came out of that Raiders game, thankfully, with a win. I needed that one for the sake of any credibility I have left on that future stance that I took on them. But this is a tough spot for them with all the injuries mounting.
Speaking of injuries, the LA Rams pulled off a lucky win over the Niners. Down 10 with like 6 minutes left. Come on. And now they go to Chicago. This was the first game I bet Sunday. I think it was Sunday night or Monday morning, but it was at 2.5. Now it's at 3, and people are stunned that the Bears are favored. Can you just articulate that? Why? I don't think a lot of people kind of grasp it.
You bet the Bears, I hope.
Yes.
Good bet. Yes. Well, a couple things. So one, anytime you get a game like that, the Rams were sub 3% win probability in the fourth quarter. They come back and they win. They're outgained by the 49ers per play. The stat sheet's one-sided. It's referred to as what I call misleading victory or misleading win. Now you see the look-ahead line, which on this game was Bears -4. It reopened, as you mentioned, Bears -2. So you have the Rams misleading win, plus a big adjustment down in the market through a key number. And it's just an easy spot to look for and be like, what reasons do I have to back, in this case, Chicago, the team that the line has moved against? And in my opinion, in that Indianapolis game, we saw another step forward for the offense. Caleb Williams, if you remove the pre-halftime Hail Mary, had 315 yards passing. He had way too many pass attempts, something that the Bears postgame said they're going to rectify and get Rashawn Johnson more involved this week with the run game, which would stabilize things a little bit. But it's a Bears offense that it likely gets Keenan Allen back, so that's another plus for the offense that is improving, and a Bears defense that's been really good for all 3 weeks so far, that faces a Rams team that's not only being upgraded a lot off a misleading win, but is dealing with injuries all over the place on offense. And now they have to be the team coming up with the encore to their big offensive shift last week, going from a ton of 3 wide receivers to more than 40% of the time using 2 tight ends. So now that kind of curveball is on film. What do they do this week going on the road outside to play on grass against the Bears? I think there's a number of different things here that point to the Bears at 3. A little bit tougher, but I still like it.
Yeah, it's weird. I'm not as bullish on the Rams, but that comeback was like literally
ridiculous.
Broke their way. Special teams, you name it. I am just curious, what have you seen from Caleb Williams in the first 3 weeks? Anything positive? Because if you just look at Caleb, Nix, and Daniels, I think it's pretty clear Williams is QB3 out of those, but it's early. I'm not overreacting.
Oh, wow. We saw Nix have his breakout game against the Buccaneers defense that was riddled with injuries that is much worse than they actually seem and look. We had Jaden Daniels in his breakout game against the Bengals defense that we just said bad things about for 2 minutes. And we've seen Caleb Williams have to go into Houston to play DeMeco Ryans and a loaded Texans defense. We saw him last week against the Colts have a really good game numbers wise that is getting kind of ignored and swept under the rug when he goes for 363 total. So it's been incremental
Yeah.
progress week 1, week 2, week 3. And that Titans defense is nothing to sneeze at either. They're very good up front, and that's a tough debut spot as well. So he's a young quarterback coming into an offense that's had some injury issues, some O-line issues up front, that has got better week after week after week, and now has the potential against a bottom 32nd ranked Rams defense in yards per play allowed to do something at home. So this is the week where he's got to step up and show it, and I think he will.
So we looked at Giants Cowboys. You said the look ahead was 7. Cowboys lose, reopens at 4.5.
Yep.
So now Bears, you just said on the look ahead were 4. They lose, and it reopens at 2.5. What's the psychology behind that? Is that the book saying, guess what? Nobody's going to want to bet the team that just lost. They're facing an inferior team. I guess the Rams are inferior, maybe. That's coming off a win. The public's going to want to bet them. Let me lower, and the value is on the team coming off a loss. Is that accurate or no?
The last part isn't necessarily accurate.
Okay.
It's more of a readjustment, so it doesn't guarantee that there's value
No.
on the other side. I think that's something that goes into handicapping and saying, why has it moved to where it is? What it is a reflection of, if we just kind of go timeline wise, the look ahead prices come out Wednesday the week prior. So today we have lines for week 5 that come out. Obviously, the games for week 4 are not played till Thursday and Sunday. So this is a snapshot of where the teams are now. And then what happens is a culmination of injuries, how teams were bet late in the week leading up to kickoff, the results in the game, as well as any potential changes. And when that's early in the season, weeks 1, 2, 3, 4, books are trying to figure out, where do we get to these teams rating wise to come up with a better number. And as the season goes on, the adjustments become less and less. But a big part of handicapping the NFL, which is kind of a league of opposites in a way, where you're trying to figure out what's real and what's not.
Mm-hmm.
And you see a lot of teams look bad one week and look completely different the next week. It's a lot of trying to figure out, has this gone too far or should it go further? And typically in these spots, an easy way to gauge that initially to start the conversation is the look ahead to the reopen and how it's being bet.
So does that apply to Tampa, Philly? Because I'm looking at Tampa, a lot of injuries on both sides. So I haven't fired yet, but I am curious if you think that logic strategy applies to Tampa and Philly.
Let's talk through it. So it was Pick'em on the look ahead. It's now Eagles minus 2.5. And so the Eagles beat the Saints, who are a team that everybody thought was playoff and Super Bowl bound through 2 weeks, right? And they come out looking really good in that. The Eagles arguably should have won by a lot more than 3 points when you look how one-sided the game was on a play-by-play and box score basis. So there's an upgrade absolutely for Philly. And then Tampa Bay loses to Denver and Bo Nix, who everybody wanted to write off after 2 weeks in week 3. So it's an inevitable downgrade for them. So you have kind of 2 contrasting situations pushing that line up. Now that we get to kind of reevaluating that, the Eagles have a week 5 bye. And so you think about A.J. Brown with a hamstring injury. Devontae Smith is dealing with a concussion. He's in the protocol. You have Lane Johnson, a key offensive lineman, banged up as well. Like, what is the urgency for Philly to rush those guys back in this scenario? I would think it's not very high, because you have the extra week to get everyone rested and right coming off of a big win. So I kind of lean towards those guys not playing in this game. The question I have, though, is Tampa Bay. Like, you have Vita Vea, Kalaya Kansi, you have Antoine Winfield, a top safety. Their defense is struggling without these guys in there. And like, Vea is massive to this defensive line. So if these defensive guys for the Bucs can play, to me, there's no way this line could be 2.5. But this is going to be very injury report dependent. So as it stands now, I think we see Vea play. I don't know about the other 2 in Kansi and Winfield, but I could only look at Tampa Bay getting 2.5 here.
Jacksonville, Houston. I'm really down on Jacksonville, as is everyone. But at 7, is there an argument for Jacksonville? Houston, by the way, a lot of people like them in the Super Bowl. Have they covered a game yet this year?
Yeah, I think there can be a case for Jacksonville at 7. It's a tough one to get to when you see what might actually be going on behind the scenes on offense. Like, is Peterson running the show and calling the plays? Is it Press Taylor? Where is Trevor Lawrence in this? There's still Evan Ingram out of the picture dealing with the injury. So it's really messy for the Jags on offense. Defensively, under Ryan Nielsen, they've just played a ton of man coverage and they've been burned week after week because they don't have Tyson Campbell. They've been down safeties as well. So it's like, how are you playing the league's highest rate of man coverage when you're without key guys to make that man coverage work? Interestingly enough, CJ Stroud in his career has struggled considerably more against man, where he's thrived against zone. In
Hmm.
zone, he's a top 3 quarterback. Against man, he's a bottom 4 quarterback. You
Wow.
would think that the addition of Diggs fixes that, but Diggs hasn't been nearly the wide receiver he's been against man coverage in the past in recent years. So I'm kind of torn on this game. We've seen hints of resistance with Jags money coming in once it's got to 7. I'm stuck on this one, to be quite honest. I don't know what
Yeah.
to do with it. I certainly thought I'd find myself on Houston, but at this price, I don't think I can get in there.
Another one that may or may not apply to that Bears Cowboys logic is Arizona, coming off a loss at home to Detroit, is now home to mighty Washington. And Monday night winners, Jaden Daniels is the man. Dan Quinn's a superstar, and Cliff Kingsbury has a revenge spot. And it feels like everybody's going to bet Washington. Should I be on Arizona here?
I would love to fade Washington. Here's my problem. The big reason for fading Washington is they haven't punted in 2 games. Their offense is unbelievable. But now it's faced the Giants and the Bengals, 2 very, very bad defenses. Arizona's right in that class for bad defenses with New York and with Cincinnati. So it's not like the Commanders are stepping up in class for opposing defense. The reason I want to fade them is because like it's not in games where they're not punting, which is crazy to talk about. They're just squeaking by with victories. Like,
Yeah.
they're not winning by multiple score margins. They beat the Giants by 3. They beat the Bengals by 5 after not punting for 2 games. That shows how bad their defense is. But can Arizona provide any resistance defensively?
Mhm.
I don't know if they can. And so I really want to bet against this Commanders team for the game where their defense is going to be exposed again and the offense takes a step back. But honestly, it might not be this week because you can move the football up and down the field on Arizona every
Well,
single week. So
Detroit
it's
didn't
tough.
score, I don't think, in the second half. I don't know if that was Arizona's defense or Ben Johnson was trying to get too cute again, but
Both,
um,
both.
okay. Yeah. Oh, by the way, what the hell's wrong with Ben Johnson this year?
Well, it's not anything wrong. Against the Buccaneers, the Tampa Bay was down 4 guys in
Yeah.
the secondary. And so he took criticism for letting Goff throw it 55 times. The truth is, Goff threw it 55 times. The Lions got in the red zone 7 times. They
Yeah.
scored 1 touchdown. So the offense there wasn't a problem. Last week, he faced a team that was very soft against the run and ran it a ton and went up and down the field for 2.5 quarters and then struggled on 4th down a couple times where they couldn't get the big play when they needed it to extend drives. So he has been going up against the weakness and just absolutely trying to expose it of opponents to the fullest extent. The In terms of what's wrong, perhaps he's getting a little carried away with it. Like, maybe Jared Goff doesn't need to throw it 55 times, let him throw it 40 and rely on this great offensive line and ground game. When you want to run it 45 times against the Cardinals, maybe have Goff throw a few more passes because they can be exposed in the secondary. It seems very one way dependent, and that balance might help out a lot. But
Yeah.
I can't knock an offensive play caller for going after a weakness of a defense.
I'm sorry, I forgot one game. Pittsburgh and Indy. Pittsburgh 3-0. I was in the offseason saying the Steelers are a 6-win team and their fans, they're just still inundating me every day. I'm still not a believer. I don't know. Maybe they've convinced you that this game managing thing works. They're going to Indy this week and they're favored on the road. Historically, not a good Tomlin spot, but the Indy defense. I mean, maybe Fields going to have a field day, if you will. I don't know.
Yeah, give me the Colts here.
Colts, okay.
The Colts win this game. While it's available, the Colts teased up with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Quite frankly, is an awesome teaser that I'd like to fit in here for folks listening. But give me the Colts here. Offensively, Indy, believe it or not, we talked about how great the Saints have been offensively. aside from last week. The Colts last week were equal with the Saints in yards per play on offense, and still this week through 3 weeks are number 2 in offensive yards per play. And all I'm reading is about how Anthony Richardson is struggling and Shane Steichen has regressed as a play caller. All they've done through 3 weeks is put up the second best offensive numbers of any team in the NFL. So something there is not adding up. And what's causing that to be true is the Colts in the red zone have stubbed their toe and banged their head a few times with just some horrible turnovers and some horrible decision making. And so, look, they're going to get that right. Steichen is too good of a play caller not to figure that out. They're now getting a ton out of Jonathan Taylor in the backfield, who I think they lean on. Josh Downs, who was Richardson's favorite target throughout OTAs and training camp, is back, and he'll be 100% for this game. This is a week where it clicks for the Colts. They win this game against the Steelers.
Yeah. All right. Adam Chernoff, Right Angle Sports. I do have to ask, I know you're not, you don't have kids, right? You're married or maybe longtime girlfriend, but how the hell are you able to follow so in depth every single team all the time? Like, there's not enough time in the day for me to read all the beat writers. I'm trying to keep up on injuries. You're already ahead of them. How are you able to do this?
Well, you're on national TV for how many hours a day?
It's just 3 hours. It's just, yeah, but
okay,
you're
so
playing
that's
golf all the
3
time. Come on.
Let's count through this. That's 3 hours. How many hours a day do you play basketball? I've seen the gym videos. I've seen the jumper,
yes.
right?
I do. I'm going to the gym. Yes.
Okay, so let's
enough.
say that's 4.5 hours. And then, I mean, you've got the family going on as well. So all of a sudden you're at like 6 hours. I've got the wife working, and then we've got a team of just over 10 guys. One of them is full-time injuries and weather, doing research, and we spend all day looking at everything because this is our lives. So that definitely helps and is part of it. But when you're betting at the highest levels, you're kind of on top of it, and it doesn't seem like a whole lot. So I do my best to share what I can through media on podcast and the live streams and stuff to keep people informed. But it's no longer a chore. It's just football season and the life that comes with it.
But like you had said something. Well, I mean, I watched the Eagles Saints because I had Eagles. And I know McCoy got hurt. That was a big loss. And then you come out on your pod this week and you said the Eagles worked out 5 guys, 5 different offensive linemen, some crazy number like that. I was like, where? I didn't even see that. So
yeah, it was the Saints that did it. They did it yesterday at practice on Tuesday. And it's some things like that have to be reported. And so the indication early on was that more guys were hurt in the Saints game against the Eagles than initially being reported. And so today, so far, we've seen no practice from Eric McCoy, Cesar Ruiz, who are 2 starting O-linemen. They had to place their center on IR as well. You have Alvin Kamara not at practice, and Alante Taylor, along with Demario Davis, are both hurt as well. So they not only did they work out 5 guys, but there's a real chance the Saints are playing in the game this week against the Falcons without their entire starting 5 offensive line. So from last year, pardon me. So the Falcons, we didn't get into that game, but very good at less than 3, I think, with the Saints injury situation. That's a lot worse than it's being reported. But that's the type of stuff you pick up on when you're into this all day long.
Yeah.
You kind of see it coming, and you have charts and notes from the games on Sunday that you carry over.
Well, wait, Falcons, they had some issues on the offensive line on Sunday Night Football as well, right?
They do. They're going to have to go to a backup center for this game, and then we're waiting to see what's going on with McGarry at right tackle. He seems 50-50 for it, but the situation for the Saints, way more dire than what the Falcons are going to have to deal with.
Interesting. All right. Adam Chernoff, obviously follow him and go to his videos and everything. He's good. We'll see if the Panthers turn it around and that over 4.5 hits. Boy, that'll be a real feather in your cap going forward, man. That was a
clip. The YouTube clip we have it's 10 minutes. There, let me point out that the Seahawks being great was mentioned in it. The Vikings being great was mentioned in it. The Chiefs being the best team in the AFC was mentioned in it. And the Eagles going over their win total while the Cowboys struggle was mentioned in it. None of those are getting comments. Yeah. But the one at the end, which is the Panthers, has turned into a 3-month roast on YouTube. And the last 2 weeks, I've heard nothing about it. So to get some reprieve in week 3 has been amazing. And yeah, it not only is it a feather in the cap, but it's going to be a very quiet YouTube comment section come the end of the season if they get there.
Just not this week. I think I'm going to probably have the Bengals in the contest. Anyways, Adam Chernoff, he's great. Thanks a lot, man.
Thanks very much. Enjoy
All
week
right.
4.